Welcome to the OC STEM Power of Discovery STEM Squared webinar. The title of this webinar is DOS Lite, How Do You Measure STEM Effectiveness? We're glad that you're here, and we want you to know that this webinar is being recorded so that it can be archived for the future. We really want to thank you for attending. We know that you're busy, especially at this beginning time of the school year, and it's important for us to share information with you as we get it to help you develop the kind of strong STEM program that you would like. The Power of Discovery STEM Squared is sponsored by the California Department of Education, the California After School Network, the California Science Learning Network, and funding sponsors Bechtel, Noyce, and Samueli Foundations. This webinar is being brought to you as part of the work of the OC STEM, who has received the commission to be a regional learning support provider for STEM programs in Orange County in particular and all of Southern California. OC STEM is working closely in this partnership with the Discovery Science Center, the Tiger Woods Learning Center, and Think Together. So we welcome you on behalf of all of those folks and are anxious to share with you the DOS tool and how you can use that tool to help create more effective programming and to be able to assess your programs. So the webinar objective is pretty straightforward and simple. The purpose of today's webinar is to share the DOS Lite tool with you. Now, I don't know about you, but the first time I heard the words DOS, it brought back memories of a time when that was typing in commands on the early versions of the computer to get it to do things. And in fact, I said to someone we were going to do some training around DOS Lite, and they said, is that retro? And I commented, no, really DOS stands for Dimensions of Science. The Dimensions of Science, or DOS tool, is part of the pair work that's being done through Harvard. And what we're going to present today is not the full DOS tool. That requires some certification to be able to use the entire tool. But what we are going to share with you are the 12 dimensions of the DOS tool and give you a strategy for using what we are calling DOS Lite, which would allow you to take a look at your program to help you plan for your program and then to assess your program at the end of the day. So there are 12 dimensions that are identified in the DOS and the DOS Lite tool. They come in 4 categories: features of the learning environment, the activity engagement, STEM knowledge and practices, and then youth development in STEM. Now, certainly all 4 of those dimensions are interrelated and intertwined if you're going to have a strong STEM program. However, it is very helpful if you can look at them in isolation so you can determine what you could do to support your program more effectively and also to plan your program more efficiently. So for instance, organization has to do with, do you have things ready and to go? Are you prepared? And so if you had a lesson and preparation was an area that you could really boost so that you would have more success with youth, that would be a fix that you could make because you'd identified that organization and organization of the lesson needed to be strengthened. And so even though organization and how you're planned for the lesson and how you're prepared will affect some of the other things, it will also help set you up for better success. So features of the learning environment, which includes organization, materials that are relevant and interesting and engaging to young people, and space utilization, which really refers to how you use the space, not so much the confines of the physical space, but how are you using it, will really help set you up for a learning environment that will support STEM learning. Then the next segment or section is on activity engagement. And what you want to know is, are the kids participating? Now, we all know that sometimes kids drift off, but are they by and large participating? If they're not and they do wander off, does someone prompt them to come back to the activity? And are the activities purposeful? Are these activities going to help the program achieve its STEM learning goals? So it's important that the activity fits, that there's an alignment, and that it's really going to meet the goals that you've set for yourself. And then are the activities really engaged with STEM, or is that really quite something that just happens on the periphery? We call it a STEM lesson, but really what it is just a hands-on learning activity. So those things would really help you to take a look at your activity engagement. The third column has to do with STEM knowledges and practices. So is STEM learning content embedded in your lesson? Is everybody aware that that's the STEM content? And even though you might not identify that to kids up front because you want them to do some inquiry and some investigation, at least your program leader is very clear about what is the STEM learning goal and that content that they want to have covered. An inquiry, which is the ability to help kids make the connections they need to make and the discoveries they need to make by asking questions, and not necessarily questions that are closed-ended that start with is or do, but open-ended questions that ask kids to truly think about what they're doing. And then the final part of STEM knowledge and practices has to do with reflection on the learning. And we all know how important it is for learning to become real for kids by reflecting on what they've just learned and how they might apply it in their everyday life. Then the final column on youth development in STEM really talks about the importance of the relationships and the collaborative structures that you have in place, and the relationship between the leader and the students, students and volunteers, volunteers and the leader, any sort of relationships that you have going on during your program. Relevance, is it meaningful to the kids? Does it make sense to them? Do they understand how it fits into their lives? Are they making the connections because the leader's guiding them through inquiry, perhaps? Or is someone simply telling them why it's relevant, and maybe or maybe not they've bought into the concept? And finally, that wholly important youth development principle of youth voice. Do you hear their voice in the lesson? Do you hear it in the planning, in the carrying out? Are they acknowledged when they ask questions? So really looking today at this DOS-like tool, which will cover these areas and will help you not only think about your programming, but plan your program, implement your program, and then assess it. So it's kind of a one-size-fits-all tool that will help you across the board. So DOS, what is it? It is a comprehensive planning tool. It is a comprehensive assessment tool as well. It's a framework. It's a system that you can plug into. That would be true no matter if you were working in STEM with younger children or middle schoolers or high schoolers. It's a framework that you can plug into and really move your program forward to accomplish the results that you're interested in accomplishing. It's a reflections tool. You can ask yourself at the end, how well did our plans work? And sometimes we find that our plans worked in spite of us and sometimes because of us. But those, the DOS would allow you a framework for doing that and being sure that you're not skipping over some things and paying too much attention to others. So it's just really helps you to have a balanced look at your program and certainly assess your program quality. We all are looking for high-quality STEM programs in the after-school space, and we also know that that's challenging. And so how do we do that? We're blessed with the fact that we can extend time and move time frames around, which is not as easy to do in the school day. And we also have the opportunity to use the things that we do best, which is hands-on learning. But we all are trying to really build the quality of our program, and so this DOS tool will help you have a framework for doing that and ultimately strengthen the quality of your program over time. strengthening program is always ongoing, but it probably takes 3 to 5 years to really systemically have it down so you can look at your program in such a way that you can effectively troubleshoot, if that's the word you'd like to use, when things aren't going exactly like you would like. So the DOS framework for the DOS Lite is really these 5 ovals. It begins with STEM learning goals, that you set your STEM learning goals by asking yourself, what is it we want kids to walk away with? And then how will you design your activity so that it will meet your STEM learning goals, so that you're not missing the mark? And then what will you need to do to prepare the activity and to prepare it so you can deliver it effectively? And then you actually do the activity and then take a look at it for quality improvement. So those 4 concentric ovals help you take a look at how that process can work, but I can't emphasize enough how important it is to begin with your STEM learning goals, because when you do that, what you're going to do is have an end in mind. You'll know exactly what you're working towards and exactly how then you can plan the steps around exactly how to get there. But it's really important that you know that up front. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but you can see how those circles work. And then ultimately, once you are looking at quality improvement, it would launch you right back to the beginning of that to start again with STEM learning goals. So what is a STEM learning goal, and what is the difference, you might ask, between how they can be written? What makes it a really good STEM learning goal and what makes it too general? So again, the question is, what do you want the youth to know when you're finished? What are the skills you want them to have that STEM professionals normally use? So for instance, one of the skills you may want them to develop is the skill of observation. That is a tool that is used by STEM professionals everywhere. They are keen observers and they can see what's going on. So you may want the young people to be able to work on that skill. You might also want them to be able to work on the skill of reflection, that they really can see the connection between what they just learned and how they might apply it somewhere else. So you're really looking at the skills, and then what's the content that you want them to know. So sometimes we make those statements pretty general. And so what we want to do is to really be sure that they're smaller and more focused. So for instance, a general topic might be something like, today we're going to learn about dinosaurs. And certainly young people would be engaged in that. But a more specific STEM learning goal would be that young people would understand the difference between different dinosaur types, such as herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. So they would understand, and in that process of learning about that, they would understand that if you look at their teeth, you might be able to tell which sort of a dinosaur or which category they would fall into. So, and then you might also be able to determine what needed to be in their habitat. So you would still be learning about dinosaurs, but rather than learning in general, which might make you think, or your leader think, that if the kids could name 5 pictures of dinosaurs, that would be enough. And so it's about going deeper and really narrowing that focus. And so when you set that learning goal, it will determine what you do, what materials you use, and how you enact the activity. So for instance, if I just say our STEM learning goal is on dinosaurs, I can collect dinosaurs from the 99-cent store. I could get some flashcards that would give you the kids facts about particular types of dinosaurs. And then we could make dinosaur eggs out of flour and coffee grounds, and all of that would have focused on dinosaurs. But if I'm going to do something that will help them understand that dinosaurs fell into different categories based on what they ate, and we would take a look at their teeth in that regard, and also the plants and so forth that they ate, and why certain dinosaurs would live in certain places, I'm going to select totally different materials for that activity because I have a clearer picture that's more limited about what I want to be sure that the kids walk away with. So when you look at bullet point 3, that the goal should be small, focused goals which are manageable, and then you want to be sure that you have enough time for youth to explore, discover, fully comprehend, and connect. So if my goal was that young people would understand that dinosaurs are carnivores, herbivores, or omnivores, and I'm not going to give them all the facts. I'm not going to start by saying, and their teeth are going to be different, and they're, all these things about them that I already know. I'm going to set it up in such a way that young people can discover most of that for themselves. And if I use inquiry and ask good questions, and such as what's important about that, how do you think that would work, to help them think about their thinking and what they already know, then I'm going to be strengthening that whole STEM learning piece. And when I select a goal that is more concrete and small and focused, I'm much better to figure out what my questions ought to be. And so then finally, of course, you want to share the learning goal by specifying what ideas youth will be exploring and how. So while you can choose to say that at the beginning, you might also not say it out loud in words, but you have thought that through so that the activities are orchestrated in a way that makes sense. So just remember that when you're setting STEM learning goals, I think we tend to start with broad goals, which is great, but I think then we need to have further conversation and dialogue so that we have an opportunity to really choose the goal and choose it well. We'll be doing some face-to-face training around this, so if that's something you want some support with, you just need to let us know. You can contact Roy Lee at rlee@thinktogether.org, and he can help you set that up. But setting that STEM learning goal is really key to moving forward effectively. Once that goal has been set, then you're ready to plan your activity so that you're designing it to, you're designing that activity to really meet your goal. I think that this is a really interesting notion, and I like it a lot, where it talks about how will I give youth a hands-on and a minds-on experience with STEM concepts. I think a lot of times we give kids hands-on experiences. They're active, it's mushy, they're doing things, very hands-on, but sometimes it's not as geared to minds-on. So what are those concepts you want them to learn, and how are you going to turn their minds on so that while their hands are busy, their minds are also busy? I think that's a really key to making your lesson design really effective. So is there something they can observe? Is it something they can work through on the computer? Do they need to build a model or something of that? Or is there a game that will help them? What are you going to do that's really hands-on and minds-on? I think that's an important concept. The next thing that you want to consider in your activity design is how will I provide opportunities for the youth to engage in STEM practices that STEM professionals perform? Because what we'd like for them to do is understand that whole process that STEM professionals go through. So we might be asking, how will we guide this whole observation process so that they understand maybe to take notes on what they're observing, and how to really understand that an observation isn't an opinion. It's simply recording what your senses are picking up, whether that is visual, auditory, smell, taste, the feel of something, so that they're really observing holistically. And then have you given them an opportunity to really think deeply because you've posed some questions? They've had an opportunity to pose questions for themselves. And are they really learning to exercise their ability to speak with some authority about STEM topics so that they understand some STEM vocabulary? and they're able to use it appropriately. So it's really about giving them opportunities to practice those STEM practices that are best practices when it comes to actually being a STEM professional. And then you will want to ask yourself, how will I support sense making? I read an article recently where a teacher was working with second graders, and all of the kids were working with manipulatives for math, and they were all very, very engaged. And while they were performing this lesson and actually being engaged in it, behind a one-way mirror were a group of observers that were paying attention to the lesson to provide the teacher with feedback. At the end of the lesson, the teacher praised the young people for working really, really hard and being engaged. And at the end of the class, one of the 8-year-old boys went over and leaned his head against the two-way mirror, and he said, "I know you're in there. I can hear your pencil scratching." And one of the observers responded, "Yes, we're here and we're observing." And the boy said, "I know we're working hard, but none of us know what we're doing." And so, they were doing and busy being engaged, but there was really no sense making happening. So what are we going to do? How will you start the activity? How will you introduce it? How are you going to prompt thinking? What are some of those questions that you will ask? How much reflection time will you provide? Are you going to help them make this STEM activity relevant to their life? What are you going to do so that you do not have that experience that that teacher had when the little boy says, "We're working very hard, but we don't know what we're doing"? So I think that that's a critical piece for us to think about. And then finally, the question of how do I support youth development? How will I see to it that young people are working collaboratively? We all know how really important that is. And how are we going to see to it that young people can share their ideas with one another, with the entire group, with the school day? How will we do that, and what are those relationships we're going to support? So when you look at this activity design piece, it may seem like, well, we'll just do this, 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 and this, but it's the thinking behind that design that will make a difference in the quality of your lesson. So certainly you're going to begin with your STEM learning goal, and then you're going to move to really planning this activity by asking yourself some key questions about how you'll move forward. Then there's the preparation piece, and preparation is everything. You know, there's this little sign that says plan ahead and the D is falling off, or the failure to plan is planning to fail, those kinds of adages, but preparation really matters. And so you need to consider the space, the materials, the technology you will need. It's really important to think it through, and a lot of times I think we think in high level, we don't actually visualize ourselves walking through the entire lesson, through the entire process, and realizing, oh, that table's really not in the right place, or oh, the materials really aren't accessible for the kids, or uh-oh, the technology is really not working. So it's really considering all those things, and certainly it is trying out the experiments beforehand. Nobody wants to have the experiment for the first time when you have an audience full of people and you realize that you did something backwards, or you forgot about some key thing that was going to happen. So it's really important that your leaders have a chance to play with the experiment beforehand themselves. And they also need to read up on STEM concepts. If they are teaching the concept from Newton's first law of motion and they're trying to teach inertia, they better be pretty clear about what inertia is and what it means that force is going to propel things so they're no longer inert. So they need to read up on those things. They would be really well served to list some questions that you should ask to support the STEM content, and then think through the answers. Are the answers ones where kids can nod their heads? If so, that's probably not the best question. You want questions that will encourage kids to think, about what they're doing, but to also think about their thinking. So listing those questions in advance can only be to your advantage. And then again, thinking through how each part of the activity is going to support your STEM learning goal. Really walk it through in your head. One of the things that brain research tells us is that your brain can't tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So by all means, vividly imagine yourself and have your program leader imagine him or herself going through this entire lesson step by step with 20 kids surrounding them, all raising their hands wanting help at the same time, because that's probably going to be the reality. So preparation is one of those things that's critical, and really thinking that through will help your leader be able to be more effective. And then finally, you're to the point where you can actually do it. You can enact the lesson, and then you can take a look back at what you've done. So certainly when you do that, if you have written down the activity or the goal, and you've listed out the design, and you have prepared and you execute, then what you'll do after the enactment, if you're an observer, you'll try and take notes that will not be your opinion, but will be direct quotes, things you heard the leader say, things you heard the kids say, a description of an activity you saw. Saw 3 youth labeling dinosaur teeth and discussing the shape of the teeth. So that way you would remember what you saw, and then when you go back to reflect on the 12 dimensions, you can ask yourself what worked as far as organization, what worked as far as the utilization of space, what worked when we're talking about inquiry. So you can go through and ask yourself that by looking back at those 12 dimensions and really asking yourself what worked, what didn't, and then ask yourself, for what reason didn't that work? Was it that we weren't prepared? Was it that we hadn't thought through our learning goal specifically enough? Was it that we forgot about the importance of having the relationships and having the kids work collaboratively because we got so intent on making it through the time frame? What happened there? And it's not that that's nobody does a perfect lesson. And what you want to know is where are we, and then figure out what you're going to do to strengthen and move your program forward. So that whole piece is important. And this too, all of these stages, we'll be happy to do some face-to-face training on as well, as to help you and support you as you move this forward. So that really covers the main things that I wanted to share with you about this DOS-like tool, and the fact that this tool will really, I believe, help you to help your program become what it wants to be. It is informal enough that it doesn't need to feel daunting, and yet it's formal enough to provide you with a system to carefully look through the 12 dimensions and aspects of program so that you can ensure that you haven't left out some key ingredient, that you have paid attention to all the parts that are important, and that you have set good goals, you've planned strong activities, you are prepared for what you're going to do, and you are also able to, once you've done it, to really take a look at what you've done and how to move forward. So as you'll recall, the 12 dimensions were divided into 4 categories. Features of the learning environment, which included organization, materials, and space utilization. Activity engagement, which included participation, purposeful activities, and engagement with STEM. STEM knowledge and practices, which included STEM content learning, inquiry, and reflection. And finally, youth development in STEM, which included relationships, relevance, and youth voice. And we had those for display at the beginning of this PowerPoint. So I just would like to tell you about some upcoming webinars we have. The next webinar is on September 25th, and it will be delivered by Pauline Viejos of the Tiger Woods Learning Center, and it is called Fit Plan. And on 10/10, Janet Yamaguchi from the Discovery Science Center will be presenting strategies for inquiry-based instruction. And again on 10/24, Janet will be presenting setting up an effective STEM teaching environment. We think that these upcoming webinars should be very helpful for you, and we would like your feedback. So let us know. Was it worth it? Is it worthwhile? Are you getting the information you need? I know that it's challenging to sit and listen for a long period of time, but hopefully you're getting some content knowledge. And then one of the things that we would most like to do is be able to provide you with coaching support and follow-up. So our support services really do include in-person and web-based professional development. We're willing to come and support your programs with coaching and mentoring and helping you to assess your own program. We certainly have engaged and will continue to support you in the evaluation process that's being conducted through the University of California at Irvine. We're very interested in helping you set up communities of practice so that you can meet with your peers on a regular basis. So we're really wanting to provide those services for you. And then, of course, there are resources, websites, STEM kits, monthly challenges that you can access on the website. So our goal is to be your partner in this. Thank you for joining this webinar, and please let us know what we can do to support you, because that is our #1 goal. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for coming to the webinar.